Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News focusing on the loss of Air India Flight 171. I'm Geoffrey Thomas and I'm delighted to say once again joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt in Germany. Good morning to you, Richard.
And good afternoon to you, Geoffrey.
It's a good afternoon here in Perth, Western Australia. This episode is Air India Maintenance Record. It's episode 228. Many viewers are asking questions about Air India's maintenance of its fleet and its overall operations. A recent audit by the DGCA of Indian Airlines in July 2025 found 51 safety lapses at Air India, including training gaps for some 787 and 777 pilots, the use of unapproved flight simulators, and issues with crew rostering and flight duty times. It identified 19 as critical level 1 breaches that required immediate attention. Now, there are some viewer questions related to maintenance. James Hamlet, S7X. Dear Richard and Geoffrey, I certainly appreciate your analysis and unbiased opinions. Honestly, I'm now left with a feeling that Air India has the worst maintenance in the industry. Am I wrong to assume this? Andy Beckett, 4480. If the inference that Air India maintenance is lacking, you might think that Boeing would find evidence of this on aircraft returned to them for upgrading. The question then would be, what action would Boeing take? Interesting question. And Gary Grant, 9612, I'm still waiting for answers on why the aircraft was delayed prior to takeoff, full of passengers with outside heat at 100 degrees. How long was the delay past its departure time? Were the passengers using the lav during this time of waiting? Was a technician called to the aircraft? Richard, now you're about to publish a major investigation into the Air India maintenance. How's that all going?
Well, it's coming along fine. In the absence of any maintenance logs being provided, I've recreated the maintenance logs from the flight data we have. The Flight Radar 24 and Flight Aware data is comprehensive. It tells you exactly when an aircraft was scheduled to depart, scheduled to arrive, when it actually departed, actually arrived, and how long each stopover was. And you can tell from the stopovers that are longer than usual what was going on. And the question, does Air India have the worst Boeing 787-8 maintenance in the industry? Well, when the DGCA ordered inspections of the entire Air India Boeing 787-8 and -9 fleet and find 51 safety lapses and 19 critical level 1 breaches requiring immediate action, then that implies there was a backlog of deferred maintenance. The first operator of the Boeing 787-8 was All Nippon Airways, ANA, who received 3 aircraft in 2011, and that's now 14 years ago. They were followed by Japan Airlines on the 26th of March 2012, and Air India was the third on the 7th of September 2012. And it's easy to maintain a new aircraft. It gets more and more difficult as time goes on. And these aircraft are now 12, 13, 14 years old. And I will not say that Air India is the worst at maintenance of a Boeing 787-8, but I will say they are not the best. ANA and JAL and Qatar and United and American all have better maintenance track record on the 787-8 over the years. We have mentioned the ground incident in London Heathrow with an Ethiopian Airlines 787. There was also an uncontained Trent 1000 engine failure on a Norwegian in 2019, a 787 just after takeoff. And the Air India Flight 171 crash is the first fatal hull loss in the history of the 787. So, of course, everyone is watching to see whether this was a manufacturer problem, an operator problem, or pilot error, or what was the cause. Boeing track the operational history of every aircraft they manufacture. And when an aircraft is sent to a Boeing facility in Victorville for a retrofit, they will see exactly what the status of the aircraft is. And I am sure they will keep that customer information confidential. But I'm equally sure if they find any issues that relate to the safety of other operators of the 787, they will be issuing a service bulletin, as they always do. And I'm quite sure any safety concerns will then be checked by all operators. The scheduled departure on the 12th of June was at 7:40 UTC, and one viewer is asking why was it delayed? Well, the aircraft requested pushback and startup at 07:43 UTC, so the departure was on time. It does take a long taxi, and the takeoff was at 08:08 UTC. And the reason why a technician was called to the aircraft is said in the preliminary report, because the pilots on the previous flight made a pilot defect report, a PDR, and they entered the status message stab pause transducer in the tech log. And the troubleshooting was carried out as per the fault isolation manual by Air India's on-duty aircraft maintenance engineer, and the aircraft was released for flight at 6:40 UTC. And I think the stabilizer position transducer does not have any impact or effect on the crash of Air India. We're looking at other possible causes of that crash.
Hmm. So Tom Peters, 4159, Richard, he says, great job, men. I haven't missed an episode. You both mentioned that the preliminary report is vague. Do you have a copy that you can attach to a preliminary report, or what's expected of a preliminary report of a past crash?
Well, Tom, yes, we do. We have a number of examples, both good and bad examples. I think the worst one I've ever seen is the preliminary report on the China Eastern flight MU 5735, which crashed on the 21st of March 2022. It was just one page long, and frankly, an insult to the international aviation community. A good example is, for example, from Bayer in France, 30 days after the crash of Air France 447. It is 128 pages long and covers all the sections outlined in the ICAO reporting standards. It doesn't come to a final conclusion, but it gives you a lot of information, and it's well worth a read. And I'll include a link to it. Bear in mind, this is just the preliminary report. They actually title it Interim Report, but there was a final report which was even longer. But you can take a look, Tom.
Yeah, Bayer is one of the standout crash investigators in the world, are they not?
Yeah, they're one of the top, and ATSB in Australia, NTSB in America, and then Bayer in France, the AAIB in the UK. Those are the people that have produced excellent reports that I've read.
They're like the gold standard.
Yeah.
So, Al Ronnie, 3211, regarding your mention of the engine failure rate, the two engines, 777s and 787s, are equal in size and speed and cheaper to operate than four-engine 747s. But the four-engine 747 is used as Air Force One, and four-engine airplanes are also used as transport for most heads of state over long ocean flights. I just saw a picture of a Boeing 747 used by the Turkish president. Please give your opinions as to why the Air Force, rather than use 777s and 787s as Air Force One, choose to wait for the delivery of new four-engine Air Force One 747s, and what the real reason might be for the Air Force accepting a four-engine Qatari 747 for use as an interim Air Force One while waiting for the new 747. That's getting pretty political. Please comment on why this is so if the engine failure rate is so low. This would seem to indicate there are two different sets of safety standards. Four engines are necessary for the president, and two engines are okay for the flying public. Do you think the Air Force and the Secret Service are overly cautious with the safety of the president? So we're going to have two answers for you, Al. From me, and my view is it's nothing to do with safety and everything to do with status. Mine is bigger than yours. But not all presidents or PMs have a 747. Australia, for instance, the Australian PM, for instance, flies around in either a 737 MAX or a Royal Australian Air Force A330 troop transport refueling tanker. So there's no status attached to the Australian Prime Minister. But Richard, you've got something to say about it as well.
Yeah. Well, a four-engine aircraft is not intrinsically safer than a two-engine aircraft. Obviously, if you're the President of United States of America, you're taking with you a whole bunch of administrative staff and press corps and Secret Service, and you need a large aircraft. You probably need several. In fact, the King of Saudi Arabia has several 747s, and he flies in one with his chosen wife, and the other wives are in the second 747, and the staff and the Secret Service are in the third 747. You want to take a look at some of those flights. And I would say, yeah, you're right. The thrust on earlier engines installed on a 747-100 was only 45,500 pound force, but now on the 747-800, they're using the GE NX2B67 with 66,500 pound force of thrust. And that is a derivative of the GE NX1B67, which is installed on the 787-8. So, it's not a question of flight safety and two different standards, one for the president and one for everybody else. It is the modern aircraft are just as safe as the traditional 747 aircraft.
Mm. So a couple of questions, Richard, on the APU. Lebeau Chat 68. Gentlemen, please, if you consider to uncover the Air India 717 crash, please check how could the APU auto start with your suggested APU battery thermal runaway, and also check all electrical fuel pump failures is considered during the aircraft certification at all altitudes and low altitudes. So that is not the cause. Maybe instead the spark fuel valves or shut-off valves electrically moved to close. Thanks. Hope this time you consider my opinion. And P Melt 834. I told a friend about your excellent presentations regarding AI 171 and very roughly summarized my understandings of your analysis. He is a retired airline mechanic trainer and was a go-to guy for troubleshooting problems for a major carrier. He had long suggested that the APU be running during every takeoff. Could that practice have saved AI 171, assuming your probable cause? Why is this not done generally? Thanks for all your work, P. Richard.
Yeah, well, nice idea to keep the APU running, and a lot of people have put that idea forward. And the counter argument is the increased wear on the APU and the cost of doing so. And as to the first comment, we have discussed the APU battery and the APU auto start many times in previous episodes. So we're not ignoring you. You're just missing the episodes. That's
Mm.
not an issue. There is no evidence that the APU auto start was successful. We are told that it was initiated, but we're not told it was completed successfully. In fact, it won't have completed because it can take up to 90 seconds for an APU to come online, and the flight was only 32 seconds. There is, however, evidence that the APU auto start was unsuccessful. The APU inlet door was found at the crash site only partially opened, and that has not been explained why the inlet door was only partially opened and not fully opened. And running the APU during takeoff would be, I think, a good safety measure, especially in the event of a dual engine shutdown, because you do not then need to wait 10 seconds for the rat to come online. You can run the relight sequence of both engines immediately if the APU is running. But when you do that, it only gains you 10 seconds. The engine relight sequence can take longer than the 32 seconds of flight time available to Air India 171. And we know that both engines were relit and had started to spool back up. But I estimate they needed another 20 seconds in order to save the aircraft. However, another 10 seconds would have helped because they would have then been able to have reached the road. It wouldn't have saved the aircraft altogether, perhaps, but if they could have reached the road, the crash outcome might have been entirely different.
Yeah. JNC 5894 GE1EM. Long name. This channel has done very well at what ifs. It's very good research and well thought out hypothesis. However, if there were any red flags, we would have heard about them by now from the NTSB and the AAIB Britain, and would have had more ADs released. They wouldn't wait another 11 months until the AAIB of India releases a final report. No way the other agencies would let 787s keep flying millions of passengers for an entire year without spilling the beans. All in all, a great channel and splendid episodes about what could have happened.
Mm.
Richard.
Yeah, well, many thanks, Jay, for the kind words. And I completely agree with you. If there were any safety concerns, then we would have heard about it from the NTSB and the AAIB in the UK. And if there were any concerns about the Boeing 787 or the GE engines, you're quite right. ADs and service bulletins would have already been published.
Yeah. Now, Claire Ortoloy, 8716. Hello, Geoffrey and Richard. I've been watching your channel since the Air India crash. Your analysis and investigation is excellent. It was very interested to hear a brief rundown of Richard's previous work. A suggestion for an episode, an in-depth explanation of both of your careers so far. This would be really interesting. Forgive me if you have already done this. Best regards to you both. You're fantastic. Well, I agree with her. So, so,
Yeah.
so shall we do this, Richard?
Well, yeah, I agree with the statement. You're fantastic too. Yeah, and why not? If Claire wants my CV, I'll send her the full length CV and see if what job is on offer.
Well, perhaps we can do a fireside chat. Now, we did do this when we met in Germany in the Black Forest. But the sound was a real problem at that bar we were at. So maybe we could do an expanded version using Zoom as we are now, and do a little bit of a fireside chat about our aviation careers.
I will make sure the fire is lit
Yes.
and burning bright.
Okay. Now, Richard, Mike D has a question that I know we've answered, but many people seem to have missed our answer. Mike asks, my questions, are there accepted requirements about how often we should expect crash updates? There was a required preliminary report issued 30 days after the crash, but are there other requirements the AAIB and Air India need to meet? An update in another 90 days, 6 months. Are there any requirements at all for interim reports, or is nothing required until the final report? Is a final report or an update report even required during specific time frame? Meaning, can the AAIB simply sidestep this forever, saying they're still investigating? Thanks for all your excellent work here, Richard.
Well, the rules are a preliminary report after 30 days, and that's been fulfilled, and a final report after 12 months. And if you can't produce a final report after 12 months, you have to then publish an interim report. And you have to then explain how you're progressing towards the final report. And the example of China Eastern crash, which I mentioned earlier, they issued the same one-page report as an interim report each year, and they've done that now for the last 3 years. And it's getting a little bit wearing reading the same one-pager, which still doesn't tell you anything about the progress of that investigation.
Exactly. There are rules, but then there are people who don't follow the rules.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, Scott Pugsley doesn't agree with your hypothesis, but I think he misses the point that it's maintenance related, thus not applicable to other operators of the 787. He says, if your hypothesis as to why the plane crashed is at all likely, surely it would have triggered worldwide safety bulletins and orders to all Boeing and Airbus aircraft customers. The absence of such worldwide response to your hypothesis, given the catastrophic implications for future flights, if you are right, suggests that the worldwide air safety community does not credit your hypothesis as even remotely likely. If you are right, it makes no sense for the community not to act immediately. Best wishes, Richard.
Not what I call best wishes, but there you go. The airworthiness directives and service bulletins already existed, Scott. The question is whether they have all been implemented correctly. My hypothesis is that the root cause was water ingress into the aft EE bay on rotation of the aircraft at takeoff. This was due to a failure to protect the aft EE bay from water ingress from the toilets just above. And my contention is that this was a known problem, witnessed by maintenance engineers several times, specifically on Air India aircraft, but also by other operators of the Boeing 787-8 and other aircraft. There have been a string of Boeing 787 ADs and SBs on water couplings, water sealants, water drip shields, and inspecting for water leakages. So I reject your unkind comment.
Yeah. Richard, let's finish with these. Craig Novy, 2090. Yeah, I really like the being in the hangar with you too analogy. Your tenaciousness is so treasured given how much in life is jumping to the next big thing without concern for proper analysis and closure of the prior big thing. Raymond Bird, 5951, great presentation. I'm not an aviation engineer, just a person that loves flying. And your videos regarding the Air India crash have been very interesting. Keep up the good work. Richard.
Yeah, well, I completely agree, Craig. And thanks for the kind word, Raymond. Uh, there is certainly no point in jumping from one thing to another if that results in leaving unfinished business wherever you go. And we do have different themes in our different episodes, but we're going to stick with Air India until we find the exact cause and know exactly what happened. And that may take some time.
Yeah. And of course, as we've mentioned before, Richard, with all the input from our viewers, it's becoming a international, global investigation into this terrible tragedy. Because we've learned a lot from our viewers, haven't we? They've prompted us to look in this direction and that direction, and they've corrected us a few times. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a great journey and a great collaboration.
Mm.
And
Mm.
we need to keep going until we are satisfied we know what happened.
And this is the first time, to my knowledge, it's ever been done the way we're doing it.
Yeah, there have been many incidents of unofficial investigations showing light on the
Mm.
cause of accidents, and we've featured a few of those in
Yep.
previous episodes.
Mm.
And I'm mindful, for example, of the Mount Erebus disaster
Yep.
and others where
Silk
uh,
Air.
yeah, lay individuals have gone to great efforts and great extent to expose what happened, which the official investigation didn't.
Yeah.
But in many cases, they recognize these unofficial contributions finally, and that is what we're trying to do as well. And it's a great team effort.
Well, in fact, the ATSB, the Australian Transportation Safety Bureau, recognised yourself and Victor Ananello and Blaine Gibson and Don Thompson and others in the search for MH370 in their official report.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
we're still collaborating on that
We
one
are.
because it's unsolved.
We are. We are. Yeah. So, viewers, that's all we've got time for today. We're going to be back tomorrow to answer your questions on our episode on Lion Air. There's quite a few really good questions, very probing questions that we'd like to address. We'll do that tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we'll be back to look at the first installment of Richard's detailed analysis of Air India maintenance. And that's going to be a very revealing episode. So make sure you're tuned into that as well as the 7371 as well. So, Richard, look, thank you very much indeed for all your work on this one today.
You're very welcome.
And viewers, thank you for subscribing to us. And if you're not, please do subscribe to us. Please also join our community. We've got some really exciting things coming up, which we'll reveal very soon. Please like us. Please do keep those wonderful comments coming and those great questions. We don't obviously get to them all because there's so many of them, but I can assure you we do read them all and we take them all in and we do appreciate them. So look forward to your company tomorrow. Thank you very much.